Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Continuing to take a look at the next week's slate. Heading down to the ACC as Florida State coming off a very impressive win against Duke. Now head on the road to play a Wake Forest team that playing some good defense, can hit the explosive play on offense. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, as normal, just want to say thank you to you guys and the amount of support that these game previews have been shown. It's been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support. So one, if you do enjoy the content, you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, though, let us know in the comment section, picks, predictions, keys to the matchup. Best part about this, talking ball with you guys in the comment section. Again, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. Dill, a big Nole fan over here, Dill. Going to give you the T-box here. Florida State now heading on the road to Winston-Salem. How are we feeling here?
And the Noles just keep chugging along. And obviously, I think in this match against Wake Forest, they probably overmatched this football team. But as you mentioned, Wake Forest has the potential to play teams tough because they do really play good defense, and especially up front. I mean, they get after teams up with their defensive line. They create a lot of havoc, and they can force a turnover too. And that, again, you look at what Florida State needs to do. Their offensive line is probably not their strong suit. So they do present some challenges, this Wake Forest team, but and you look at what this Florida State defense is doing, I think they're going to be a handful for Wake. And in Florida State's just a really good team, as much as people don't want to admit it.
And I would know, I think that offensive line is taking steps in the right direction. Like, they're finally getting healthy. I think they got like that rotation that they like. I think the last couple of games we've seen Florida State probably at the strongest on the offensive line, which again, I think really the kind of the missing piece in what is I think a national championship caliber team. Dill, I want to start with this Florida State offense going up against, so you noted, a Wake Forest defense that can make some noise, create some havoc. What I love most about this Florida State offense is how balanced it is. And that's rare to see because you look at a lot of really high octane offenses across the country. They're either really good at running the football, really good at airing it out. Florida State, extremely balanced with their play calling, almost a 50-50 split, and do both extremely well. I mean, they're top 15 in the country running the football, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. I think that is probably one of the best backfields that you see in the country with Tuafili and Trey Benson. And then in the pass game, you're looking at two of the better wide receiver duos too, with Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, a couple of young cats coming along, Hakeem Williams, got Shaheem Bell at the tight end room. Dill, the amount of weapons Florida State has on offense with Jordan Travis at the quarterback spot, it just poses so many different challenges to opposing defenses.
And specifically, I think just looking at the run game, I think as they start getting into more of the meat of their schedule and obviously their ACC championship run, hopefully, and maybe even a playoff run, I'd like to see Jordan Travis more involved in the rushing attack.
Agreed.
I think when you saw in the second half, they started to use him more. That rushing attack really picked up. And frankly, I don't know that this rushing attack with this offensive line, I think it's good. I don't think it's a totally dominant unit.
Jordan Travis changes it. If you add Jordan Travis's legs, I think he fundamentally changes how difficult it is to stop this Florida State team on the ground.
And giving Trey Benson a little more space is huge because I've noticed like when they give him anything, he is so dangerous. I think wildly underrated. And again, his stats probably aren't going to be right up at the top of the running back stats, but like just watching him play, so good, so smooth as a mover, and at that size, just incredible. And then he can hit the big plays, very explosive. So I'd love to see them get Jordan Travis more involved. I think it adds an element, it makes them more dangerous, and it frees up Trey Benson to go eat a little more.
And we've like noted Jordan Travis every single year he's been at college football, he's just taken a step as a pocket passer. And you're seeing a really good pocket passer that Jordan Travis has, but that shouldn't like make you forget that he is the most dangerous player on the field in terms of having the football in space as well. I was listening to Bud Elliott, Nolecast, Florida State fans. You want good Florida State football content. That they do a phenomenal job over there. Probably most of you listen to them. They were noting like Jordan Travis, you want to get him more involved in the run game, but it makes sense. Like, you're going on the road to Wake Forest. You want to see if you can win that football game without carrying the ball 10 times for Jordan Travis, right? Because you got to keep him healthy if you want to win a national championship. But you noted it best. As you start playing a team like Duke, legitimate top 25 team, or some of these teams that you'll see in the playoffs or in the ACC championship game, it's unarguable that this Florida State offense, especially with that rushing attack, is at its best when Jordan Travis is being a threat as well. Though I do want to talk a little bit about the passing game because we noted at times you're a little concerned with maybe too reliant on Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, which when you have two wide receivers like that, give them their touches, give them their targets. Jaheim Bell emerging as that kind of just offense utility weapon, it has been massive because, again, when you have two absolute alphas on the outside, those safeties have to respect them. They're both one of the two best at working vertically. That leaves a lot of space in the middle of the field for a guy like Jaheim Bell. And when he gets that football in his hands, he is a load to bring down. Really excited to see Jaheim Bell kind of emerging as another weapon in this Florida State offense here.
And again, when you talk about like an extension of the run game and being able to do a little more, when you're not a team that can necessarily just go line it up and run power down people's throat, that's a big thing I think you wanted to add. And you're right. Jaheim Bell with the ball in his hands is really good. And he's continuing to, I think, make some strides in terms of catching the ball and showing some better hands, which felt like kind of the sticking point in terms of why I wasn't getting it earlier.
I also, sorry to interrupt, I think there's an element, and South Carolina struggle with this too, just like how we're using him, right? And he is a tight end, wide receiver. I think they're comfortable, or at least the last couple of weeks, much more comfortable with how he kind of fits into this offense. He's kind of finding his niche and role in that offense, which I also think is really meaningful with a guy who kind of is a little bit of a tweener as a pass catcher.
Yeah, and just adding that kind of third weapon, because you're right. Those two need their balls. I mean, Johnny Wilson yesterday, I thought, made some gigantic plays. Didn't have any drops, which, again, another sticking point for him. So,
yeah,
those two are so good. Keon Coleman obviously doing his thing, but I love the emergence of Jaheim Bell. I think it makes them far more dangerous, and I'd like to see them continue to use them because, again, he adds a different element to this offense. And, again, when you talk about, like, having to cover every blade of grass, he very much helps with that because you can use him underneath and in a little bit more different role than those two you use more to get the ball down.
So many NFL dudes, you know what I mean? Like when you just go down the list, like they got 2 NFL running backs, they got multiple NFL pass catchers, Hakeem Williams being a guy that will be an NFL guy eventually as he continues to mature. It's offense basically impossible to stop when it is humming. They'll flipping the sides here. Wake Forest on offense really struggles. Like they want to run the football now that Sam Hartman's gone. Mitch Griffiths, questionable with an injury. For Florida State fans, like that's something to just kind of monitor here. Like they might be playing a quarterback 3 here. So we'll see about that. But what Wake Forest does on offense, they got a few playmakers at that. Wake Forest always has some good wide receivers, right? Jamal Banks, Taylor Moore, and Keyshawn Williams. Some guys who can hit the explosive play. But post Sam Hartman era, they've really, really struggled with their identity. And in pass protection, it's been a massive struggle, giving up sacks on 12% of their dropbacks. That's 128th. Dill, when I look at this Florida State defense, we've been kind of calling for, hey, let's set this front seven, specifically this defensive line, a little bit more active in terms of getting after the passer. This is a massive opportunity to get some of that confidence back.
In those D-tackle rotation is unbelievable. I thought Braden Fisk was incredible yesterday. That was probably as good as I've seen him
100%.
play at Florida State. But what I was like most pleasantly surprised with, if you will, is Patrick Payton having a really good game. And he's kind of the X factor guy we've been waiting. Jared versus a stud in who's going to kind of emerge on the other side of him. I thought that was a big time showing for Patrick Payton, not only in the pass rush game, but also made a bunch of really big plays in the run. So as he kind of completes and fills his game out, I think, again, that you're looking at a really dangerous front seven for Florida State.
Patrick Payton, 15 pass rush attempts, manufactured 6 quarterback hurries. He had a 43 pass rush win rate last night. Like this dude was just dominating. That's a really good Duke offensive line. And Graham Barton, Jared Verse, they had their battles on the other side. Patrick Payton, Jared Verse, if they can kind of hit their stride in the second half of the season, like that's, I think, the key to this dominant defense. When you have 2 edge rushers that are as elite as those two can be, Jared Verse, my edge rusher number 1 in the NFL draft. Absolutely love Jared Verse. Pat Payton coming along. You mentioned it. Fisk. I saw Fabian Lovett played some really good football. This defensive line really coming into their own. I think they got a pair of really good linebackers. And then you look in the secondary. I mean, Shane Brown, Fentrell Cypress, Jared, like this is a group that is pretty sticky. And I thought they did a really nice job against Duke last night. And a group that I'm excited to see go up against really talented wide receivers against Wake Forest as well.
And this is where they can test them, maybe Wake Forest. Again, that's been kind of their answer on offense is to hit a play or two explosively.
Yeah, that's what they got to do.
When you look, just frankly, like man on man against Florida State, they're too much up front. And you just know that Wake Forest's offensive line is probably not physically really in the range of what Florida State's going to throw. And they have 2 probably lines that they can throw at them that are going to overmatch them. But that probably is, again, where Florida State's going to need to continue to play well. And probably the the one hole you've maybe seen at times is secondary play, but it's really started to pick up there. And you talk about it. They were on those Duke wide receivers when Duke was able to.
That was what we noticed. Like, how many times did you see a Duke there got some decent wide receivers, very little separation. Like when there were some completed passes, which weren't very many for Duke, that was just good on good. Like Florida State was making everything hard in the back end for Duke. Really impressive performance. And again, it was ugly in the first couple quarters, right? You had some stuff really. This is what I'm so like happy about and why I love this program and team so much this year is that it couldn't have gotten worse, right? You get stopped on 2 fourth down conversions, you give up an interception for 6. And it's like that for a Florida State team, for the old Florida State team, that could have been a death sentence. You know what I mean? You don't win that game and you kind of melt down. Not this Florida State team, really veteran guys. I was really impressed. Again, not the prettiest game in the first half, but in that second half, that was about as dominant as you've seen them. And that peak Florida State team, dude, it's one of the best teams in the country.
And that's what the teams have to do. You got to play when you play your not A ball. You got to
win games.
You got to pound teams, and that's part of this college football era. And that's frankly what I thought they did yesterday against Duke.
Especially in the you've seen a couple of really good second half performances, like against LSU, like that's as good as and then against Duke, like this is a team that is a second half team, knows they can win games in the big moments. They'll get into the pick here. Florida State heading on the road to Wake Forest. The Lions have been moving around because of the quarterback situation, so don't worry about the spread. Florida State heading on the road to Wake Forest. How we feeling here?
I think Florida State's going to house them, and I just having watched my share of Wake Forest game and maybe being on the Wake Forest side once in a while.
Hey, flash the shirt for us.
I do have Wake Forest shirt. Shout out your school, but I don't know. They're physically, I think they're so far away from what Florida State's can be bringing on both sides of the line of scrimmage, or especially on the offensive side. They can obviously play a little bit of defense, but I just don't see how they stop these playmakers enough, and I don't see how they score really at all. They've really struggled all year.
This is just it is just a personnel thing too, and it's also Florida State just pretty much better at every single spot. It's really hard, and especially with this Florida State team, it's really hard to see this team going on and just like even if they do play their C ball, like it's probably good enough to beat Wake Forest, and they know how to win these tight games. Really hard to not have a lot of confidence in Florida State heading on the road again. Went to Wake Forest. Love the program. Got to go with the Noles. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all rocking with us, and we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.